Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. Thank you to everybody who's streaming in from across the internet for our show today. We're going to have the great Jason Meath on. He's a filmmaker, he's an author, he's a Republican ad man, and he's going to be telling us what you as political leaders can learn from Hollywood, from entertainment, from media, and how you can use that to make yourself an even greater political leader. So we're looking forward to that. And as I understand, he's called the Scaramanga of political admin, which if you're familiar with the man with the golden gun of the James Bond series, we're going to have to ask him about that as well. So we're going to be talking about his book, Hollywood on the Potomac. And check that out right there. It's an excellent book, and he'll tell us some stories from that and his work going to lots of presidential libraries and working with a lot of folks to get some very interesting pictures for Hollywood has shown up in Washington, D.C. many times over the years. But before we bring him in, I'm going to bring in our co-host, our co-pilot on this journey to political leadership, and the Buckeyes' best, Sean Bartley. Sean, how the heck are you?
I'm doing well. Good morning to you. Good morning to everyone out there. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a lot of fun today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that. And anybody who wants to join the conversation, they can do so by posting anywhere in whatever, if they're on YouTube, if they're on Periscope, if Periscope still exists. I'm not quite sure if it's still on. It's open. Or Facebook, wherever you're at, you can post a question or comment and join the conversation.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity to join us and really discover what's going on, and really get how to get connected with us. And so, feel free to join our texting group. Again, that number is 202-918, and then it's 3345. So, reach out to us there. It is a great way to get connected. And then, we're proud to be able to bring you this show today, and what we're going to be, and we want to thank our sponsors for making this possible. And so, first, are you thinking about running for office, or you want to know what it takes to really be able to go to the next level in being a powerful political leader? We'd love to have that conversation with you. I'd love to start that journey with you today. Go visit us at olsonstrategies.com, OLSON strategies.com. You can email me at Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com, or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com, and let's get that conversation set up today. And then we're proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. What do they do? It's all of the one-on-one, human-to-human interactions a campaign can have on the doorstep, in front of the grocery store, or over the phone. It's really a great opportunity to get connected with voters and do it on a scale that makes a difference. So visit www.grassfire.us. And then go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I just so if the internet trolls out there and the gremlins are going to go after us today, whenever we are doing something that's an important topic, sometimes the big tech companies do have an impact on what we are up to. But I think we're going to be good.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure that people knew if they want to join us in the conversation, they can also use the texting platform. You can text us directly at 202-918-3345. Again, that's 202-918-3345. And you can actually personally text us, and then you can actually text questions into the show as well. We also will send out every single day, we send out the show directly to that text chain. Or you can go to our website, politicaltradesecrets.com, and you can sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets insider, and you can get exclusive stuff. So people can also do that as well. And you were saying.
Yeah. And so we're talking about texting there, and that's where you can text with us personally and really get connected on what we're talking about in the show and whatnot there with the community. And then look, you need to communicate with a wide swath of people quickly. Today's Tuesday, so it's an election day somewhere. Um, there are people reaching out to us today to get stuff out to their voters as they're heading to the polls. So there's a way to do that. It's 10centtexting.com. This is your way to connect with your voters, your constituents, right where they are on their mobile device. Image, GIF, short video, right there in the body of that text message. Not a better way to actually get your message out. And we're going to be talking today about the importance of images and imagery and how that connects with folks. So being able to deliver that right where they are is it's an amazing innovation that's happened in the last really just in the last election cycle. And so 10 cent texting is at the forefront of that. So go to 10centtexting.com to learn more about how.
Yeah, and on that texting, I think we sent out one of Jason's beautifully made TV ads via text last election cycle. It's one of the things that's brand new, and being able to text is that you can actually text out a 30-second TV ad directly to your voters, which, a lot of campaigns these days don't have quite the budget to get their ad in front of every single person they want to. And if you have 82% of people opening every single text message, and you're able to get your TV ad or your rich media GIF or picture directly to people and to get your message out there, that really does make a difference. And then the interaction that you get to have with voters, they send back a message, and then you get to talk to them. And in one case, we even saw people raise a bunch of money on the Get Out the Vote text. So there's all sorts of opportunities. I think it's the tactic for this upcoming election cycle.
Yep.
A really great tool. Well, I'm looking forward to this. As before the big tech gremlins came in, I was just telling you about this book. It's a really great book. I've enjoyed going through it and looking at the pictures. Hollywood on the Potomac. And there's so many examples of when Hollywood came to town, I think is how he puts it. And there's, a lot of people who love the spotlight in politics and in Hollywood, and they definitely are, maybe seem like strange bedfellows to some folks, but there's definitely a lot of commonalities between them. And I'm looking forward to talking to Jason about his background with documentaries. I've seen on Newsmax, I don't know how many times now, I watch it every single time I turn it on, is Bad Decisions, the Joe Biden story, which, by the way, for our YouTube traffic, is when we had him on to talk about that documentary, was one of our most popular episodes.
Yes.
A lot of people really enjoy that. So what are you looking forward to learning about from Jason?
Well, I really find his background fascinating. Like, he started as a DJ. Can't wait to hear a little bit more about that. He's worked in like 6 presidential elections, so really being able to make a difference there with ads and whatnot. And what I'm really fascinated about is that he's not just written Hollywood on the Potomac, but he also co-wrote a children's book with his son, and I look forward to hearing about that. And the documentaries, you mentioned the Joe Biden, Bad Decisions, the Joe Biden story, really a lot of fascinating documentaries. And what I'm really looking forward is the conversation around really the differences in creating ads, creating segments, and the things that I know, like the stuff that you guys worked on for the convention, and then these longer documentaries, and really the different skill sets those take, and what we can learn in the political world about all that, and particularly what political leaders can learn from all these things. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation around all of that today.
Well, likewise, something that's personal to me is he did a documentary several years ago. I'm from Colorado originally, and I witnessed the Rocky Mountain heist as it was happening. And he did a documentary called Rocky Mountain Heist, and it's about the blueprint and how these billionaire Democrats took over the state, spending lots of money, and how they changed the rules. And when you change the rules, you change the game, and we see that happening all over the place. and it'd be interesting to hear his insights on that, and related to the current political atmosphere where Democrats are trying to change the rules all the time. But we have Jared Polis in Colorado, who is one of the early architects of that Rocky Mountain heist. He made it all the way to the governor's mansion by doing that. Well, I'm looking forward to this and having this conversation. So with that, we will move on with the program. Jason Meath, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's one of the first things I want to ask you is I saw in your bio on your website, I had never heard this. I don't know if it was Chuck Todd or whoever it called you the Scaramanga of politics, and I wanted to get the story as to how that came about and what's behind that.
The Scaramanga came from a political publication. It wasn't Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd was also weighing in on the documentary that I had made at the time, which was sort of became a famous piece of political history called King of Bane, which was a sort of a takedown of Mitt Romney in 2012 when he was in the Republican primary. I had been brought on to head up all of the media for Newt Gingrich's super PAC that was being bankrolled by Sheldon Adelson at the time. And I had made a film about Mitt Romney because I had been a former aide of his in his 2008 campaign. And so I kind of knew some of his weaknesses that I think we actually kind of see today while he's in the Senate in certain cases. Some of his sort of credentials as a conservative being a little bit dubious. And so I made a film about them because that's what you do in a Republican primary. You try to help your guy win the primary. And it sort of upended the entire race to the degree that the documentary was being played on cable news almost on a loop every day for 2 weeks going into New Hampshire. And then later, as Romney's campaign started cratering in South Carolina and then into Florida, where he had to spend about, I think it was like $8 million to $10 million to just get out of Florida. But at the time, the press was going nuts about it because they love it when Republicans say nasty things about other Republicans. They can't get enough of it. So they were playing this thing over and over again. People were writing movie reviews. I think the Gene Siskel website came out with a review on it, and boy, they were all glowing. I'll tell you, they really were, because it was against the front runner. But anyway, that was the reference to the James Bond villain. As well as many other very interesting, colorful explanations as to who I must have been, because nobody really knew much about me at that time.
You're mysterious, and you're still a little bit mysterious, but we're going to hopefully pull back the curtain a little bit today and find out a little bit more about you. And I'm really fascinated. I had never knew about this. I was a DJ in college, in the college station, but not a real professional DJ. But I was curious to find out that you were a top 40 80s music disc jockey, and want to find out like how you got into that. And then one of the things that we're really interested in, we were talking with John Rogers, your business partner, and we talked to him about being an equities trader and what he learned from that he's brought into politics, and got some great answers. And I'm curious, what did you learn as a DJ that you have brought into politics? Like where and how did that all come about?
Well, my very first, my parents gave me some advice when I was getting ready to drive a car and all that, and it was that, you really ought to do what you really love in life, and that's you really should just do what you really love in life. And I took that very literally for my first job. Instead of becoming a waiter or doing the other things that maybe some of my friends were doing, I auditioned. Kind of sort of talked my way onto a dance or a Battle of the Bands contest, and I became the host of it. and I named myself Don Money. And Don Money walked out on stage with a sequin tie and a fedora and looking very much like the 80s type of stereotype. And I emceed the entire event. And the reason why was because the head DJ at the Top 40 radio station was the main judge. And he was brand new. And he looked at me like, I'm a 16-year-old kid, and everybody in the entire auditorium's going nuts. I must be like somebody big and famous. Of course, nobody knew who I was. They were just happy that the show was getting started. So the next thing I know, he's got me in the station. He goes, you gotta interview this kid. This kid's incredible. You know, they didn't know I was a kid either. They thought I was in my 20s. And I signed the contract to be a DJ, and that's when they saw my age on the application. And then they said, so you've never run a board before on a radio station? And I said, nope, this is my first job. So they were really great about it and gave me an opportunity to become a disc jockey and to get a lot of airtime. And they put me on like when they thought the teenagers were listening. And so it became kind of a thing. And the thing you asked me was, what are the things I didn't realize about being a DJ that I know now? Well, it's probably different at the college station you were at, Dustin, but you don't get to play your own songs.
Yeah.
It's all on a computer printout, and if you don't play those songs that's on the computer printout, the little red light on the phone would come on, and you knew that was the station manager going to yell at you. So I think every hour you could play 2 or 3 of your own songs, or maybe something that somebody requested. But other than that, they wanted you to stick to the script. Then the second thing is maybe less surprising was that, well, it was a great way to, let's say, meet all sorts of people, especially members of the opposite sex, while you were in high school.
That's amazing. Most kids are flipping burgers, and you were kind of becoming a jet setter a little bit as a kid. That's pretty cool. Well,
it was fun because none of the other disc jockeys wanted to take the winners of the contest backstage to meet the famous people because they had done it so many times. So they would rope me, or maybe they were married or they had kids or whatever. So they'd say, oh, give it to Jason. So I'd be the one picking up the winners of the contest in the limo and taking them to Tina Turner, or taking them to David Lee Roth or Run DMC. We did all. I was backstage for all of them, and it was quite an educational experience. Probably much more than I ever would have learned in high school.
Oh, I mean, that is just fascinating, and the going out there and basically making the audition during that hosting episode there, really, I think it really just speaks volumes. And how have you seen, like, really just taking the initiative like that make a difference when you're when you're going out there and you're creating an ad or a documentary, like taking it to the next level? Because that sounds like a next level thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a certain kind of personality. I mean, it's probably what you tell candidates a lot. If you're going to run for office, I mean, you have to put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. There is a correlation between, doing this type of work in documentaries, television shows, and whatnot, because you are creating something out of nothing. At that time I was creating a persona so I could get what I wanted on the job on the radio. But it's not just a persona. It's as I got older, I learned that you could create all kinds of things. You could make things to really make a difference out there. You could inform people of things that they did not know. And usually that represents threats to people when you do that type of work, because you're exposing something that, Dustin mentioned the Rocky Mountain Heist. It was funny, the reception that documentary got, because I approached it rather than approaching it as some enraged conservative about, oh my God, can you believe what they've done to Colorado, and they've turned it blue, and it's the biggest blue state, and it used to be red. That's unfair. No, it was a love letter to everything they had done. I gave them all the credit in the world to say, look at what they did to this state in a very short amount of time. And by the way, that is such a, I think out of everything I've done, it's still the most incredibly relevant information within the documentary, because they have done that then to Virginia, which is what we said in the documentary at the end. We say they're going to do this same thing to the state of Virginia. And it didn't even take them that long. It took them less time to do it in Virginia than it did in Colorado, which was very surprising to me, because I'm from Virginia and I thought, oh, no, people in Virginia, they vote for Republicans, they vote for Democrats, they're very even-keeled people. The whole state changed almost overnight in terms of going just straight blue. And they're trying to do it in Texas, and we do reference that in the documentary. The documentary was actually conceived as a piece by Fred Barnes, the great political writer and commentator. Fred Barnes was the first one to notice what he called the Colorado model. And they took that model and they replicated it in Virginia, and then they're trying to replicate it desperately in Texas. It's much harder for them because they know once they get Texas in the same category as Colorado and Virginia in terms of voting, then it's game over in terms of national elections for Republicans. So anyway, when you're doing that kind of work and you're assembling that kind of information, you're obviously upsetting sort of the apple cart of the other side, because they have a playbook that they very much want to keep concealed in terms of what their plans and objectives are.
Do you see any of that happening on a national level? You know, we have this Time Magazine article that came out where they talked about fortifying the election, and they had been working to change rules across the country. Do you see that this is being implemented at a national level also?
Yes, the Time Magazine article was revealing in just as much as sort of the Rocky Mountain Heist documentary was a lot sooner than that, because they're very blatant about it now. They're, as you know, maybe in the past they wanted to keep this stuff kind of as more of a spy versus spy. This is kind of what our side is doing behind closed doors. They're very open and blatant about exactly what they want to do to push the envelope, bend laws, change laws. Sometimes going way outside the purview of let's just do it and then we'll let the courts decide later, which is what happened in this recent election in many different cases in terms of absentee ballots and counting ballots. So that Time Magazine article laid it all right there. I mean, it was very, very blatant in terms of what they're willing to go ahead and just say they're doing now.
Yeah, I was. Go ahead, John.
I like to say that it was far more transparent than the election.
It was. It absolutely was, because the people that you and I know that are on the other side in Washington are very much more willing to just sort of say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. This is how we want to fundamentally change the way people vote. This is the way we want to fundamentally change how votes are tallied and counted and distributed. Every single piece along the way, whether it's battling in court, battling in state legislatures, battling on school boards, battling wherever they can to be able to influence and to push their agenda. And it all starts, by the way, on a very small level. Like for example, you mentioned Colorado. When we were talking about Colorado, they started at the school board. Then they went to the state legislatures. Well, forever and a day, everybody was told, you want to run for state legislature, you need 25 grand, and here's the guy you call for your mail campaign. And that was it. Well, suddenly these people roll into town and they got $2 million and they're attacking the guy on television. All he's doing is running for a state seat. So they kind of did a sneak attack and said, here we come. And they never let up. They've never stopped.
Yeah, at this point, people feel like they're completely defeated. Republicans in Colorado at this point, they have that attitude, and you can kind of see it in Virginia too now.
Yeah, the only place they start getting themselves in trouble, at least historically in Colorado, is when they go after people's guns. They try to change the gun laws. They try to ban guns. They try to do all sorts of shut down gun shows, do all the rest of it. That's when people really start seeming to rise up and say this is the last straw. In Virginia, you saw it where various sheriffs and municipalities were saying that they were going to become a sanctuary city gun zone, right? This is sort of the latest tactic that the right is sort of saying, well, gee, if they can have sanctuary cities for immigration, then maybe we can do it for guns. Maybe we can do it for other issues. I think that's a great way to go. Take a page from their playbook at this point, because theirs is a lot more advanced than the Republicans.
Absolutely. And we actually were a part of the recall elections of the Senate president and whatnot in Colorado, where we removed people from office who pushed the gun legislation. I'm curious. So you're a DJ and you're going through school as a DJ, but then at some point the political bug bit you and you ended up doing political work. When did that happen? Tell us the story, how you got into politics.
Well, DJing is a young man's game. I could see that even as a young man. And I looked at some of these guys that came in there on the weekends or whatever, and they used to be the big deal, and now they're like, they look like me, and they're trying to like talk to kids, much younger than them. I said, I don't ever want to be that guy. So I always really wanted to do film. So what I did is I went to film school. I studied film. I studied screenwriting at Columbia. I produced films. I did all sorts of student films, and it was all fictional work. It was all, I didn't really have much of a political bone in my body at that time. I knew I liked certain politicians. I loved Reagan, thought he was great, maybe because he was an actor. That's probably why I loved him, because I loved film. But, but I just did. I knew, I was sort of aware of politics, but it was really all about filmmaking. And as my friends in film school were producing these extremely expensive thesis project films, when you're in film school, you sort of your last thing that you do is a big thesis project film. And of course, everybody thinks that this is going to be the next big film coming, the next independent, sleeper hit. So they ask their uncles and their aunts and their rich grandmothers or whoever they have for money. And these people, they pour, at the time, it was about 125 grand that people were spending on their films. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I do not want to go into debt and, produce something that nobody's even going to watch. And, after I get out of school. So, at the very same time, it just so happened that Haley Barbour was the chairman of the Republican National Committee and had been given a very large sum of money by the DeVos family to build a studio in the basement of the Republican National Committee. I didn't even know what the Republican National Committee did, much less where it was located. And Haley says, well, why don't you come? You went to film school. Come on down. We're going to make a TV show.
That's awesome.
Of course, is not why you go to film school, to do a television political show. But hey, I was the closest guy that probably knew how to do it. And so me and a few other people that he had brought in sort of formed a team and built out this television show, which became a weekly show in the basement of the Republican National Committee. And it was great fun. It was very, very well produced because it was very well funded. And it was one of the few times I think the Republicans had a much bigger upper hand on the Democrats in terms of putting out their own content. At the time, it was on satellite. You didn't have the internet. So we were beaming this out to satellite, and it was being brought down by certain cable outlets, which was also an emerging field of the WGN network at the time was the one that aired our show to about 7 million people, plus everybody pulling us down on satellites, plus local stations that were like sort of in the local cable game that were bringing in our show. So it ended up that we ended up getting seen by not seen, but we're available to 74 million households. So it taught me a great deal about a few things. The power of being able to message directly to people during political legislation, during political campaigns. This was during the contract with America. Of course, leading up to this, we were pumping out messages across the country constantly about the Republican platform for the 1994 elections, which became like the biggest tsunami of success for the Republicans in a generation or maybe more. So I saw that sort of all work really firsthand from the inside at a very young age. And I kind of fell in love with politics that way. It's a very long way to answer your question, Dustin, but that's pretty much where it happened.
That really is fascinating. I mean, how that all came about, and I'm going to guess of your film school class, you probably had the most watched of anybody on what they were.
The show was far more successful than anybody's films. I can't even.
Absolutely. And to learn at the feet of the legendary Haley Barbour, who he himself was one of the great communicators as a party chairman, I would say he really was big in making that wave happen. What was that like, and what did you learn from Chairman Barbour, now Governor Barbour?
Well, the power of communication. I mean, in my opinion, he was Reagan-esque in his terms, in his ability to connect with people. He's also a little Trumpian too, because he's very populist in many ways, and was just incredibly. He just had a great presence on camera. He did not. There wasn't a fake bone in his body, and that was so refreshing to see. And he was very visible across, this was back when the news media wasn't really so one-sided. So, I mean, he was constantly on the Sunday shows, and it didn't matter whether it was CNN. Fox was kind of very fledgling at the time. It was really mainly a CNN, then later kind of the MSNBC. But he was out there all the time, and very down to earth in the way he approached issues and the way he approached our politics, and being able to explain what the stakes were and what the choices were out there in ways that very few people can accomplish. And he probably was a little bit of his homespun sort of Mississippi upbringing that helped that, but he was also just a razor smart guy. I'll never forget sitting on election night in 1994, and he's watching the returns come in pretty much as they were being reported on. And there wasn't a single race in the country where he didn't know every single bit of information about the person running, the person they're running against, how much they need to, overperform in this county versus this precinct or whatever it was. And that just blew me away. I thought, it was so impressive to see. And of course, it was great that everything was going your way. It's wonderful when things go your way, like more than anybody ever predicts, kind of like the 2016 election. There's a few times in, at least my history where I remember nights like that on election night. And that was definitely one of them in 94. Certainly the 2014 election for me doing the Bush-Cheney campaign was another, but that was the first one, I guess, that I ever experienced. It was great fun.
Well, looking back on that experience with GOP TV, which I remember the show, I remember it coming on, and I was like, wow, this is interesting that this is actually happening. Do you think anything like that could happen today? Or is it you get to have your networks? I guess we have our own networks as opposed to a TV show from the RNC.
But I think it should happen today. I think the funniest thing, and when I look at what we have now out there, I look at when I was a kid, I had to buy an 8mm camera. We had to take our bikes to the photomat to get it developed. That's how we had to make films. Now kids have, everybody's got a camera, everybody's got an editing system, everybody's got it's so easy to do this stuff now. So what I would say, and so, to take that further, at GOP TV, we had, gigantic cranes show up on Capitol Hill and put satellite dishes on the top of the roof so that we could beam out. We had to buy satellite time on a real live satellite up in space and beam it back down. All these things you don't have to do now, just like what you guys are doing. This is a great example of sort of the modern day GOP TV sort of model, is that you all are taking your message directly out to people and doing it in a very innovative and effective way, given the technology that we have. And I think that there needs to be more of that. out there on our side for sure. Yes, I do.
And what benefit have you seen, I think, from that and really being able to bring it to the ads and other things that you do for candidates to be able to, go around the need for the to go through the media, the filter of the press or the media, describing it, and really being able to get that content and getting the attention yourself? Like, how has that been? How was that critical then, and how has that translated into work you continue to do?
I mean, that's a great question, because I think the person that ends up really figuring this thing out is going to, maybe, be the next titan of politics, because the problem we have here is that politics is such a personal game, and this type of communication is a little impersonal when it comes to meet and greet, press in the flesh, and especially on a local level. I think it's very much a person to person game. But I think what's great about this medium is to bring people in from out wherever they are in the country and introduce them to a wider category of opportunities and of voters. Listen to their ideas, expose them to possible sources of fundraising, expose them to a more national stage to be able to be lifted up by some of our national leaders and make them sort of the new rising stars of our party via a wide national audience. Because on a local level, it's very difficult in the short amount of time that you have a campaign to be able to gain the traction that you need among a good pool of voters watching and being engaged online. That's a very difficult thing, and one that you guys do very, very well. It's a science, as you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's the trick, is that how do you do that on a macro or a micro level versus a macro level?
Yeah, I'm glad you put it that way, because that is what folks, and really depending on what level you're at, it's going to make a difference. And if you're running for statewide and federal office as well, still being able to get it down to where you can connect with somebody personally, and break through whatever else that might be going on is the thing that's going to make the difference.
Yeah.
For folks. And because we've said it before, at least about a decade ago, it was that the average person spends 8 minutes a year on politics. So you have to break through into all that, and it's no wonder, like, if you're there in line when you're voting, and the person in front of you knows that they got to go vote that day because there's a presidential election going on, and they go in and they go, "What are these 20 other offices? What's this all about?"
That's right.
So and that's where they spend the most time on it. Is, oh yeah, I guess I've got some decisions to make. So that's where we come in. So yeah, and so Jason, seeing this and really being able to take what you learned there right at the beginning, where did you see, like, what was the next step in politics for you? So quite a place to start, right? While in film school. So what did you see next?
Well, just going by the timeline, right after the RNC, I left politics and I did a Discovery Channel show.
Oh, cool.
I created this show called The Feds, which was sort of another interesting Washington story. I was doing a project in one of these big government agency, law enforcement agency back rooms, and we were sort of working with cameras and stuff. And I looked at this one room that was sort of like a dark storage room, and they opened it up, and there were just boxes and boxes and boxes of videotapes. And I said, "What in the world is this?" And then it was just like that last scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where like they're putting the Ark, and there's boxes in the government warehouse, and it's just like they go on forever. They said, "This is all of our undercover videotape." And I said, well, has anybody ever seen that? And they were like, well, probably not outside of like a jury or. And so they put one in, and there was a guy, that was making a drug deal, and he pulls a gun out, and there's like this whole like 14-minute like held at gunpoint thing that's all on these undercover cameras. And I said, this is a show. This is like this is a primetime show. And that's just this tape. What do you have on all these others? So it was as simple as literally taking some of these tapes and stringing them together and sending them over the Discovery Channel. And I hate to make it sound so simple because it's never this simple, but they were like, yeah, we want, so it became this primetime show. And actually the narrator was Roy Scheider from Jaws. We got him involved, the late Roy Scheider, and it became a great success. That is until 9/11 happened, and the whole caught on tape thing just wasn't really where it was at anymore, because we just saw the ultimate horrible thing in front of our eyes, which was all caught on tape. And so that's kind of when I really wanted to make a transition back into politics. I had an opportunity to begin working with campaigns, and then with the Bush-Cheney re-election, and sort of became a member of the media team there, doing ads for them. And so, of course, that was a really great, I think everybody, all of us that were involved in politics at that time, it was especially meaningful to be kind of, really at the seat of where our government was at a time that was probably one of the most trying and difficult times for our nation. So that sort of had a profound impact on me. And then I said, look, I'm going to continue to do this stuff the way that I want to do it at some point. So I started my own company about 11 years ago, maybe 10. And I just, wanted to write books. I wanted to make films. I wanted to do everything that I'm doing now, continue to work with campaigns, television shows, that type of thing. And really to do it, because I do believe that this is really important for not just our side, but our country, to be able to have different viewpoints in programming. I don't care what it is. I mean, we shouldn't be served up the same type of sort of leftist, we used to be left of center. Now it's just leftist. It doesn't matter whether it's entertainment. It's definitely with news and documentaries. That there really needs to be an all sides balanced set of offerings out there. And Lord knows we have, I don't know how many streaming services now. I mean, there's another one every day. These people all need content, and we need to have more voices on our side supplying this kind of content out there.
If you're a conservative in this country, you will get the leftist perspective. You can't help but go outside or even stay in your house, and you're going to get both sides of the argument. And whether you want to or not, you're going to get that. But if you're on the other side, there's very rarely a chance that you're ever going to see a conservative perspective. But do you think that there's a bit of a maybe a resignation on those who might be filmmakers on the right, conservatives who would be making media, that they've just kind of given up and they've decided not to do it?
That's an excellent point, because I have met, and I'm sure you have too, I have met these people that are seemingly rational, normal people, but all they've ever been told or all they've ever seen is the viewpoint from the left, either on the news or with a documentary they watched about the fact that the earth is going to end in 10 years because of climate change, or whatever it was that they watched, of which there's a ton of it out there. They're shocked when they hear that there's another side to an argument. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, I've met many conservative type of, there's conservatives that started out in Hollywood that realized they were conservative, and then all of a sudden said, holy crap, I can't tell anybody what I really believe. And then they eventually get very disillusioned and they leave. I've met a lot of those people that just said, I'm done with this. I don't need this anymore in my life, trying to pretend like I go along with all of this for whatever reason, whether it's the content they're working on or the people that they're working with or they're working for. There's always this friction in many cases. So so I'm kind of unique in that I'm sort of hunkered down in my little bunker here, doing what I'm doing, and I'm not going and pursuing the big contracts with some of these providers, because I know that they're going to immediately say, no, we don't want any conservatives. What you should, I think, where I've found success is you make it, you produce it, it's good, people like it, and once they see it, they say, well, I don't really see how we couldn't show this.
Yeah.
And so then that's when you get it out there. That's sort of
that's Jason. That's one thing I've appreciated about your documentaries. They really tell a narrative, not in a way that's like gotcha, not in a
Beat you over the head.
Yeah, it's just a really just telling the story, and they have a great flow to them. How important is that? Like the story and the narrative and the flow really go together. So, keeping people through the break for those that are out there thinking about picking it up. So,
that's important. I mean, I think it's a real important point. In fact, when I was working on a documentary about the surge in Iraq, I was working on the script, and we had interviews from President Bush, and we had interviews from Vice President Cheney, and we had interviews from Petraeus and Odierno and all the soldiers that were there, and they were talking for the very first time about the surge. So I knew it was an important thing to get out there, because we wanted the people that served in Iraq and Afghanistan to feel like it wasn't an abject failure. We wanted them to know that, in fact, the surge worked, that the surge was sort of the way that the war began to turn a corner, and that what they did as part of that effort was very valuable work. So there's your little agenda, right, if you want to call it that. But I knew that if I had Bush and Cheney in the documentary, it would immediately politicize it. So we left all of the interviews out from those two, and we focused just on the people that were in Iraq, working on the surge, implementing the surge every single day. And as a result, it ended up winning the Discovery Channel Award at a major film festival. And so once that happened, the Discovery Channel said, hey, we'll put this on our network for Veterans Day. And so it became this Veterans Day offering on, may have been Military Channel at the time, or it could have been Discovery. I can't remember which, but it reached an enormous audience. So the mission of being able to tell our story and consciously going, let's leave some of these more polarizing political figures out of it. I loved President Bush. I loved Vice President Cheney, but I had to make sure that I wasn't going to kind of let my selfish political bug get in the way of telling the story. We just wanted to tell the story. And I think that's what conservatives sometimes have a hard time doing, is that, look, peel all this other stuff out of it and just tell your story, your issue, and why it matters and why it's important, and try to leave some of the more hot button political stuff by the wayside, because our story wins when we tell it the right way. It wins.
That's excellent advice, and that could go for any candidate out there who's running for office. A lot of people want to take the juicy item, and that's what they want to focus on, and they could maybe take a little bit of that out. And clearly they have similar values to most Americans, and they can tell real American stories. So what could an actual candidate, so we have a question here from the audience, what advice would you give those of us preparing to run for office? Thank you. So, from the perspective of film and entertainment and the media, and the story that you just talked about with the surge, what could an actual candidate learn from that?
I think be true to yourself and make sure you know exactly why you're running.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the first step. And then don't get clouded by all of this stuff that's going to come at you from every single direction. You're going to start. It's very easy when you're preparing to run for office to feel overwhelmed.
Mhm.
There's money to be talked about. There's figures that to be tossed around. You find out how much it costs to run an ad on your television station, and it blows your mind because you can't believe that it costs that much.
Yeah.
And then you're told, well, if you're even going to have a chance in the primary, you've got to spend this amount of much money, and that's more money than some of these people have made, or certainly they've never tried to raise it. So it's like, where do you start? So all that can kind of get in the way of your vision and your focus. And I think if you have that same vision and focus for each facet of your campaign, you start winning. I mean, you've seen them just like I have. We've seen campaigns where they're run well, and you feel like you're on a Navy ship going to win the biggest battle in the world, and you always do, because you feel good. You know everything's firing on all cylinders. It's a tight ship, and you've also experienced the other kind of campaign where you're going, oh my God, we're rearranging chairs on the Titanic. So you
it's
definitely
just always trained on that iceberg. It's always going towards the iceberg.
yeah. Because things are the whole reasoning of running and the whole reasoning behind the campaign is getting lost. So that would be sort of, I mean, it might sound a little generic, but that's the best advice I can give when you're preparing to run. And if you have any doubts as to whether you want to go through it, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah. That's really good advice. I'm curious, with the film background and being in film school, you clearly love film. And what were the great influences that you had in the film world that you have brought into your own kind of work and really had an impact on you? And then maybe what politics could learn from those influences as well.
Wow. Well, you're asking me to make some big leaps here, because I was a Spielberg and Lucas fanatic when I was a kid. And other than maybe Darth Vader and a few Death Star references, I don't know how you could equate that to the modern political world. But yeah, I mean, look, I also really liked filmmakers like Francis Ford Coppola and his Apocalypse Now. And that really taught me how you make a commentary kind of film. I mean, the whole film was about Vietnam, but it wasn't about Vietnam. And that's what was so great about that film. You didn't have to make one of these kind of agenda films to shove down everybody's throat what a disaster Vietnam was. All you needed to do is create a story within that big framework of the war. And it explained it so much better, so much more on a human level. And so I think that's what I really take from everything, because you get a filmmaker like Steven Spielberg, who is incredible about conveying emotion and about humanity and human experiences. You get a guy like Coppola in Apocalypse Now.
Oh, man. So Sean, if you wouldn't mind letting Jason know to jump back on. Here he is.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, good. All right, welcome back. The big tech overlords are at it again, but here we are. So you're just saying about you're transitioning to Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the main takeaway is, we as conservatives, we as people that make ads for candidates, we have to get away from the paint by numbers PowerPoint kind of ads, and we got to get more emotional. We've got to be able to tell the emotional journey. Everybody has an emotional journey in their life of some kind, everyone. And that helps you know what type of person that is. People want to know through, they're so sick of the barriers and the film of technology and news and cable 24/7 cable news of politics, that when you actually can tell a human story about your life as a candidate, that is something that sticks with people. And you said the 8 minutes in politics spent a year.
Yeah.
That's at least one of the minute. I mean, that is at least one of those minutes. If you can penetrate your story to the voter in an emotional way, that's the key. And, that was the other thing we didn't really talk about, polling. I mean, polling is great, and polling really matters at certain points of a campaign. But my gosh, don't ever let it get in the way of what your vision and your story is, because sometimes that can be more powerful to sway people to your campaign.
Well, your point there is a salient one for folks. I think people are looking to get connected with who they're voting for. Like if they're going to say, hey, there are some things and they're less about like, okay, what's the white paper on this issue, or they want to know that you're going to have their back. They want to know that you're going to be fighting for them, and they want to know a little bit about you as a person. And I think there's and why that matters to them. And
Right.
I think it's something that we've really seen when we've worked together is, why whatever happened is important to them and what they care about. And I think we've always really tapped into that. And I'm interested, it's really those types of connections that you kind of get to in the connection that people don't think about in your book, which is the connection between Hollywood and Washington, and exactly Hollywood on the Potomac, and people don't really think about that connection. How has that been important, really, for decades?
Yeah, I mean, I went back as far as the invention of television. So it was around Truman that you really started seeing more of this kind of symbiotic relationship between at least presidents and entertainers. One kind of wanted what the other one had. A lot of presidents, especially, would love to be adored, as Hollywood people once were. I don't know if they still are, and then vice versa. I mean, I think that celebrities often feel like they're not, really all that as relevant as they want to be. They're certainly not as relevant as who's in the White House. So one has this kind of dating relationship with the other. And look, I mean, a lot of people have told me, oh, well, that wasn't really Trump. I'm like, what? Trump was a celebrity. And then he had the Kardashians in and actually formed an incredibly meaningful piece of legislation after their meeting with prison reform. So there's always been, and it doesn't matter which side it was. I mean, with George W. Bush, I remember it was country music stars and baseball players. I mean, that he loved. I mean, they were always in and out of the White House. And so I wrote the book going back to the 80s again, when I was a DJ, or just before I was a DJ, maybe. Michael Jackson visited Ronald Reagan in the White House because he was performing a concert in RFK Stadium in Washington, and he sent almost a list of demands to the White House. He wanted to have a meeting. He wanted to be given an award. He wanted the Reagans to come to his concert and get up on stage, and he wanted all that. And at the time, the lawyer for Ronald Reagan was a guy named John Roberts, who is now the Chief Justice. And he looked at this the list of demands and kind of fired back this letter saying, we're not an adjunct public relations arm for Michael Jackson. And so the two sides kind of calmed their tempers. And of course, the staff of the White House got mad at John Roberts because they said, "What are you talking about? We want pictures. We want photographs. We want to meet him."
He didn't read the public very well, is what you're saying.
Yeah, right. They were like, don't tell him not to come over here. Give him what he wants. Bring him over. So he did give him an award.
But it's a gift he continues.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't read the room.
And they did give him an award on the South Lawn. They presented him with, I can't remember what it was. It was probably something about, I think it's the drugs. Nancy Reagan, keep kids off drugs, ironically. And he accepted the award, and there was this big press conference, and Reagan was out there, and Michael Jackson in full sequin glove and sequin outfit was out there. And I just remember as a kid, maybe 15 years old, 14 years old at the time, just my mind was blown. I was like, what am I looking at here? This is so surreal. And I carried that kind of feeling to me in Washington. And as I would, be working in politics, and I would see these celebrities coming and going all the time. When I was at the RNC, I mean, we had MTV in like 3 or 4 times that wanted to interview young staffers. And I had you'd had famous singers and whatever would come around inauguration times to be at the parties and about all the black tie events and all the stuff. And I thought, this is interesting to me. I want to know what does Michael Jackson talk about with Ronald Reagan? What does Elvis talk about with Richard Nixon? What do they have to say to each other? And so I did. I found out a number of those stories. And like Dustin said, I tried to do it in the most, probably given my literary background at the time, probably the best way for me to have done that was through a lot of pictures. But I also did it through stories. So it's mainly photographs. I think it's over 220 photographs, many never seen before. Not even the presidential libraries knew they had them.
Wow.
And then we found out that a lot of them had stories attached to them. And so we just documented in the book and just kind of made a nice little conversation piece.
Well, tell me a little bit about this one. I think you told me this almost was the cover of the book. Is that right?
Yeah, I thought that. I mean, that's just, Elvis and Nixon. I don't know how you top it, but the publisher did tell me, if you want to sell the maximum amount of books, put a Kennedy on the cover. So I thought that's probably right. So we went with JFK, which of course, I mean, selling books. I mean, nobody sells books even now more than the Kennedys. But the Elvis.
Tell us the story about Elvis and Nixon.
The Elvis Nixon story was really incredible because you want to talk about a president who just really wanted to be adored by young people, especially. I mean, there's nobody in my mind that could come, faster than Elvis would. I mean, people would say he would stare outside the windows at the young protesters out there, and he would just demand of his aides to come up with a way that he could reach out to them. Well, lo and behold, what happens? Elvis shows up at the Hotel Washington across from the White House and drives up to the guard gate. Back when 16th Street used to be open, you could drive right on up to the guard gate. So he had his limo drive up to the guard gate, and he said, "I'd like to see Richard Nixon." He hadn't had no appointment, nothing. And it just so happened that Nixon was in town, and the guard said, "Well, we'll give this message." Obviously, they knew it was Elvis, and they said, "We'll give this message to the president, and just give us a number. Maybe we could call you." And so Elvis went back to the hotel, and later, I think that night or the next day, he got his call because Nixon basically paced the floor for the rest of the day, figuring out what I've got to be able to get Elvis in here, and we've got to make this statement that he likes me and I like him, so the young kids will like me. Well, of course, by then, I mean, Elvis was not the teen idol that he once was. Maybe to Nixon, he was quite young, but I mean, he was not the teen heartthrob. He was more of he was going into the Vegas Elvis at that stage of his career. And Elvis said that he wanted to become a deputy, a federal law enforcement deputy, and he wanted to do that to, once again, kids on drugs. Wanted to tell them get off drugs and whatever, and he wanted to be deputized, of which Richard Nixon immediately sent a memo to the federal director of the FBI or narcotics at the time, whatever their title was, and said, bring over a badge. We need a badge right away. So there he did. He gave him the badge. Elvis got his badge, and Nixon got his photo op. And, that's the way it works.
That's amazing. And is it true, any truth to the story that Nixon was packing heat at in the presidential meeting, that he had a gun on him?
I did not find out that information, whether Nixon was packing heat, but it would not surprise me by the looks of the photographs.
Yeah.
If either one of them were.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's a fascinating book. I've enjoyed going through it. And I'm curious, if you were to, so you did this about 10 years ago, is that right? Wrote the book, put it together?
It goes through Obama. We don't have, I should do an updated version with Donald Trump, but it goes through Obama. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that was my question is, if you were to do an update, what pictures would you want to have? You've mentioned a couple possible scenarios.
Well, you'd have to put the Kardashian pictures of Trump and Kardashians. You'd have to, I remember there being quite a few celebrities visiting Trump Tower when Trump first became the nominee. They were going up the golden elevator at that time. They were all spotted in the lobby, and there were a number of them actually at that time. That would be very, very interesting to me. There was a number of people during Obama that we don't have covered in there, because Obama was just becoming president when this book, when all these photographs were being brought together. So obviously we have Oprah in there and a couple of others. We have George Clooney visiting Biden actually at the time. And I don't remember exactly the details of that story, but that's an interesting story even now, because they were meeting on something that became an issue with my Biden documentary, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you're all connected. All these things are connected.
Well, that's a good transition.
Overseas, meeting of some kind.
Well, I've been pleased that the Bad Decisions, the Joe Biden story, is still airing on Newsmax. It seems like every weekend, if I turn on Newsmax, I get to see it, and it really, and also when you're talking about the feds, something I'm just amazed by is your ability, and I'm sure there's some kind of secret to it, but your ability to take in lots of information, lots of footage, and to be able to chunk it down into a narrative that tells the story, and just how you take so much footage and you turn it into an actual 1 hour documentary or a television show. Like, how do you go through that? I imagine that with the feds in particular, that was a lot of footage to go through.
Yeah, that was a lot. And in that one, it was a little bit easier because we had the whole federal law enforcement folks that could sit in a conference room and tell me what the better ones were, because word gets around on the force and whatever, and they're like, oh, you got to get this guy when he pulled the gun on such and such. And so we were able to get some pretty good ones that we knew right away we were going to do. Another one was a bomb going off, things like that were pretty major. But you're right. I mean, it's always a fear of mine when I do these political pieces that I'm going to leave something out, that the first thing that somebody's going to tell me is, oh my God, it was great, but I can't believe that you left this out or whatever. That hasn't happened yet. I'm going to knock on wood, but it's because we really do go through and scour, and it is a lot harder now because a lot of the tech firms are suppressing anything that is in the least bit critical of Democrats. So if we're doing a piece on Joe Biden and his career in politics, it was the hard, because this was the most recent thing that we've done, I guess. It was the hardest research that we've done on any of these yet, because people are pulling the content or vastly suppressing them. So you couldn't find a lot on, for example, Ukraine, or you couldn't find a lot of things on Joe Biden's racial comments and problems with African Americans and throwing the most African Americans in jail through the crime bill that we've seen in a generation. It was very difficult to find that stuff. Where you could find it was local news, because they haven't gotten to local news yet. So it was mainly like, you're not going to find anything from Fox News. You're not going to find anything from Critical on any of the major networks. But then you got this little network down here in some city or whatever, and they've done a report on it, and you go, oh my God, this is what we've been searching for. So you could find things like that. But I think it's just a matter of time before they start suppressing a lot of this stuff on YouTube, on even any Google searches. I mean, all that kind of the typical searches were very difficult.
It's like the character Winston in 1984. His job in the Ministry of Truth is to go back and get rid of the old news and to change it around. And what you're telling us is you're actually having a real challenge, because that's what's happening.
That's what's happening. I mean, we found, like, it was interesting because we found certain things that they thought would show him in a really good light. Like we found all the White House footage from his trips to Ukraine. And he was boasting that he had been there 9 times in like 2 years. And that he was, that the Prime Minister of Ukraine was getting sick of meeting him because he's always there and he's always hanging out. Well, we were able to connect a lot of that timeline to other reports that came out later about Hunter being there and why Hunter was there and what was going on behind the scenes and all this other stuff. So, I mean, that's how you kind of have to do it, is you have to sort of it's what's called investigative journalism is really what it is. And nobody wants to do it against Democrats. So, I mean, there's very few people, if anybody, really doing this type of work.
Yeah, I loved what you were able to really connect there, and I learned new things from it. And we thought, hey, we've been learning a lot about Joe Biden and what had been going on there, but it was really fascinating, and I understand why it keeps getting run. It's interesting to see it from a completely different aspect. And so,
well, it's been great. I've been able to develop a very nice, very good relationship with Newsmax, who I feel is an up and coming, real contender network. They seem to be doing things the right way. I mean, look, if we all remember a lot of these fledgling networks at the beginning, I remember CNN being kind of laughable when it first came out, and then it became the powerhouse. And Fox News was the same way. Fox News was, pretty bare bones at first, and it very quickly rose to become a major. And I think conservatives need a choice. I don't think that we, and I also have a very good relationship with Fox and Fox Nation, but it's better to have choices.
Yeah, and it's in the content that you're creating for them is really, I think, taking the production value up, and that's one of the things is they're getting their feet underneath them. They do a lot more real news than the other stations, and you actually told me this several years ago that Newsmax was really trying to take on being the real news network, that they were trying to do news that they'd be Republican leaning, but they weren't trying to be overly conservative, overly political.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that there are, you could call them center right, but they're not. No, they're not trying to be ram it down your throat propaganda network by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they've got Mark Halperin on there for goodness sake. I mean,
Yep.
so they are taking a balanced approach, which, if you remember, like I do, I lament it all the time. I used to love watching the news at 6:30 at night on a network. I used to love watching the Sunday shows like Meet the Press, and they're unwatchable now. I cannot watch them. I mean, I think just, maybe, I don't know when it was, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, they just became just almost laughable in what type of content. I mean, we tried to watch 60 Minutes the other night. You can't watch it. It's got agenda written. I mean, the subtext of everything that they're doing has just got this agenda to it that it's insulting to your intelligence. I really miss the days where reporters just reported.
Well, let's talk about the current projects you have. We were talking before we started about cancel culture, and you were talking about the work that you're doing with The World Is Watching. So, anything that you're currently working on, anything that you would like to tell people about that you think they should check out?
Well, sure. There's a good documentary that we came out with on CPAC. If you're fans of the CPAC conference, you'd probably be surprised when you watch it, because it doesn't just talk about the conference in Washington, but it talks about the global fight for freedom against socialism, of which the people that run CPAC, the American Conservative Union, is very much involved with, more so than I even recognized, or most people certainly would be surprised to see what they've done. So we filmed the documentary in 6 different countries around the world, and came up with sort of a snapshot at what people, not just in America, but all over the globe, are confronting with socialism. I mean, for example, I'll just give you a quick example. In Australia, we have all these Antifa protesters that show up and are railing against the conservatives being able to form any kind of conference there, and doing it violently and very loudly, just like they do here. I didn't know there was Antifa in Australia, but they're all over the world. So that's on Amazon Prime. You go on Amazon Prime and search CPAC, and you'll find it. And then I'm also working with them on another documentary on cancel culture, which is really, I mean, I don't have to tell anybody, it's taking over every single day. Something's canceled, someone's canceled. Sometimes it's someone famous, sometimes it's someone at school, sometimes it's someone down the street. It's happening to people every day, and it's chronic. So we're doing a piece on that, hoping to come out with that end of the year. And we've already interviewed something like over 40 people for it. It's sort of not hard to find anybody that has an opinion that, on cancel culture. Everyone has seen it either happen to them or someone that they know, or something that they really like. Yeah. Like, maybe your favorite Dr. Seuss book, or, Mattel toy, Potato Head. Something is getting canceled almost everywhere. And sometimes it's as silly as that, and sometimes it's far more serious. So
it's fascinating. Yeah. Like a month ago, we had Ben Higgins, who's a former Bachelor from ABC's The Bachelor, on the program. And the day that we were interviewing him was the day that Chris Harrison was being canceled. And it all happened at the same time, so we didn't get a chance to ask him about it. But it was fascinating to watch the Chris Harrison situation. It's constant. You can never get away from it. We deal with it here. Facebook disappeared all of our video content for like a day and then turned it all back on. And you realize just how much they have control over whether or not you can actually be seen. And that all goes to it.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll just say that Amazon, I'm glad that they finally put the documentary on Amazon Plus. But they did it about 5 days before the election. They had it since March. So, and it usually takes them about 5 days to get it on. So they through the 2020, the year 2020, they didn't want it to come on until right up to the election. Then they put it on. So they had March, April, May, June, July, August. We're trying to tell them, why isn't this coming on? Why isn't this coming on? Getting the runaround. So they clearly wanted to keep it off of the platform until people had voted. That's what's going on. It's pretty frightening.
1,000 millions of decisions like that. Just one of them doesn't make the difference, but you do enough of that, and it starts having a real impact.
Well, their side does. It's bit by bit. It's just taking small pieces of everything off until you're left with nothing. I mean, it's virtually every single thing they do. It's give an inch, they're going to take a mile, and it doesn't matter what it is.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that when it comes out. I've seen The World Is Watching, and it is excellent. We also have watched your tribute to Rush Limbaugh that you did for CPAC. I'm curious, so you do CPAC, you do the videos each time. You have, I think, a team of videographers who run around and get footage from every CPAC. And what is that like?
It's such a big thing. At CPAC. Yeah, we do. We were just down in Orlando. We had crews roaming around. We had crews doing a CPAC live show with Matt and Mercy Schlapp. We had teams backstage getting interviews for our cancel culture documentary. So there's a lot of things going on all at once at a CPAC, and it's always a great amount of energy and a great amount of fun and a great amount of really great people that they assemble from all facets of conservatism. I thought this year was particularly diverse. They had an ex-New York Times reporter who had gotten canceled. We interviewed him for the documentary, and he wrote something that they didn't like, and that was it for him. But it's incredible. And we had an ex-filmmaker from Hollywood that had worked with some of the biggest stars in Hollywood, and he just got so disillusioned that I think he's running for Congress now.
Wow.
So there's it's always a dynamic place. It's been really, really fun working with them. And I'll tell you, it was really interesting to see how Florida is dealing with the pandemic versus Washington, D.C., because I got to tell you, it was like stepping off the DeLorean time machine, and you're back in, the normal times, because everybody was staying safe and staying healthy, and nobody had it any more than they do anywhere else, but everything was open.
Wow. It's pretty remarkable. Well, as we wrap the show, so do we have hope when it comes to cancel culture? Are we turning the tide? Is the pendulum going to start to swing back because they have gone too far?
Well, you've got to think that the rest of America is going to get really sick of this if they haven't already. But I also think that this is not a single party issue. This is what happens to the left now, and I'm noticing it more and more. They all think that they support something, and they're all going to go along with it, but then suddenly it comes for them. So, J.K. Rowling said something that she's one of the most liberal, outspoken women out there, and she said something about that they thought was transphobic, and so they canceled her. And even Harry Potter said, the guy that played Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, said he won't even be in a project that she's a part of anymore. That's a pretty big statement, saying that against somebody that basically made your entire career.
Yeah.
But this is how they feel. This is what they do. Bill Maher has come out railing against cancel culture. I don't know of a single funny comedian that hasn't said something about it. There's plenty of comedians like the ones that are on late night television who think it's all just fine. But then again, they're not funny. They have nothing to say that's funny. So why would they care? But Jerry Seinfeld and Ricky Gervais and a number of these people, are very upset because they can't practice their craft.
Yeah.
Without getting criticized. They can't go on college campuses anymore. So they can't get HBO specials anymore. So, even we'll say Dave Chappelle did get a Netflix special, which became controversial. I'm
Mhm.
surprised he wasn't more canceled than he was, but Lord, they tried to cancel him
Yeah.
just because he said some things that were somebody got upset about. I mean, it's crazy.
It's one of the last funny things that's on Netflix, and it makes everybody mad. It makes Republicans, Democrats, it makes everybody mad, but it's actually funny, and you just can't do that anymore. It's against the law to be funny these days.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it refreshing to find
Mhm.
somebody that's just, I mean, you poke fun at somebody because you're going to poke fun at yourself and you're going to poke fun at everybody else at the same time. And that's why we all kind of laugh. If we can't laugh at each other anymore or with each other anymore, with each other, okay, that's what
Mhm.
we always used to do, is laugh with each other, but we're not doing that anymore. We're attacking each other.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate. I can't wait to see the cancel culture project that you're working on. And if people want to work with Jason Killing-Meath, how can they do that? And what should people be looking to connect with you?
Well, I would say just Google me and you'll find probably that and a lot more out there. And would love to talk to anybody who's out there. On anything. I really enjoy connecting with people, and thanks for the platform you're getting out there is really great. And it's always great to work with you guys. I must say, I've worked with you guys on many very fun projects. Always highly skilled practitioners. You guys are the best in the business. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thanks for really sharing with us today your experiences and how that's made a difference in the political landscape, and how it can make a difference for candidates now, because that it was really valuable for all of us to hear. So thanks for doing that.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. All right, on with the show. Well, that was excellent. Thank you, Jason, for joining us today. And I've been, as I mentioned earlier, I've been enjoying going through his book and seeing all the pictures, a lot of stuff that I've forgotten over the years, and some that I'd never seen before. Pretty remarkable, but people should check that out. I got mine on Amazon, and you can check that out there. And then we also have down there at the bottom of the screen, torchlightstrategies.com. That's his company that he has with John Rogers, who we've had on the program a number of times. And then you can email him at jm@torchlightstrategies.com. So please do that. And I really do think the world is watching is definitely something that people want to check out. We think the world of Matt and Mercy Schlapp here. And one of the people who helped me get my start in politics was Matt Schlapp, and people should check that out. CPAC has really grown and expanded under their leadership, and really has made a difference. But Jason is one of our favorite people to work with as far as media goes, because he really does bring the story into all of this. And anything that you'd like to add to that, Sean?
Yeah, well, I thought it was fascinating, not just the book and kind of how that all came about, but really talking about what it takes for documentaries and really being able to tell a story, and getting your own narrative out there, getting your own story out there, getting your own vision out there. There is a lot to take away from that today, and so I really encourage people to really dig into some of the things that Jason had to say, because it really is a breadth of experience that most people that do this don't necessarily have, and a wide ranging. So I really acknowledge him for taking on some different projects and different things, and it's not just kind of a one-way churning out just the 30-second ads or whatever. So
yeah, the paint by numbers, as I think he called it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of political operatives who do media, and that's great. I really appreciate, and we talked about this in our fusion strategy episode, and our idea of how looking at how other industries do things, how other people have solved problems, the different solutions that you find in different disciplines. And I really appreciate that he has that film background. He's done
Yep.
more like television production, and he's done these other things, because that is really something that's been missing in political ads: vision, story, emotion. And for Republicans in particular, a lot of times Republicans can be a little bit of bean counters. They can be a little bit more of accountant type of folks, and you need to be able to connect with people on emotion. We did a whole episode with about Cicero, the Roman leader, and how he said that persuasion is emotion, and that is I think that was really clear coming from Jason today, that he sees that too, that if you don't bring some emotional connection to it, then you're really not going to connect with people. So very, very good. I recommend people check him out, and check out his other work. I'm looking forward to the cancel culture project that they're working on, and I look forward to referring to him as Don Money from now on, is my favorite 80s DJ. Well, we're going to be having a couple of other great folks on, and you're talking about this cancel culture. I think it's going to be on the let's see, I think it's maybe when are we going to have the Google Archipelago? Michael Rectenwald, April 13th.
12th. It's a Tuesday.
April 12th. So we're going to be having Michael Rectenwald, who actually wrote a whole book, the digital, it's Google Archipelago, the Digital Gulag and Simulation of Freedom. And he really gets into a lot of what we talked about at the end of the program with Jason. And Jason's living it. He's dealing with it at a real life level. Of his documentaries are being impacted by the disappearance of digital information. And that's actually how Michael Rectenwald ends this book. So if you want to get the book beforehand, if you want to read it and be able to ask questions about the book when we actually have him on, I highly recommend that. But that's how he ends the book. He talks about how with everything becoming digital, that they can really erase history. And you're starting to already see that happen. And it's pretty scary. We're also going to be having Scott Young on in 2 weeks. I think today we talked about ultra learning when we did the Fusion Strategy show. So we're going to be having him on to talk about how you can accelerate your career, master hard skills, and outsmart the competition. Every single person who runs for office is basically doing ultra learning projects, and he has a whole process for this. And he talks about people who've taken on public speaking, for instance. It's a really great book from that perspective. So we're looking forward to that. And then you just let me know earlier that we're going to have Jim Renacci. So tell us a little bit about that.
So former Congressman Jim Renacci is going to be on. We're going to talk about the changing politics of the Rust Belt, and really get into that. We're going to be doing that on April 1st, and it's a series that we're going to be talking about over some time here, but really going to get into how Ohio's changed and how he's from a suburban area, how suburban and ex-urban areas have changed over time, and and how that is really affecting politics, not just here in Ohio, but across the country, and really getting into what the voters' concerns are as he continues to travel the state and really get to dig into what's going on across Ohio. And so we're going to be learning a little bit about that too. So it's going to be a great episode on April 1st.
Yeah, so we're doing this new series, The Shifting Politics of the Rust Belt, and we started our other series of Revitalizing America's Hometowns, and we'll be doing also our Reigniting American Patriotism series, and having various guests come in to give their thoughts on those things or to highlight people. The Reigniting American Patriotism, I'd like to give a plug to that. We really want to highlight people who are patriots out there, who are doing something for their community. They're embracing something about our founding ideals. They're doing something that really is making a difference for the community. We want to highlight those people. So really, we want to highlight heroes out there who are being the best of America, so people can join us in that. If you'd like to get more of the the freshest political trade secrets. You can become a Political Trade Secrets insider by going to politicaltradesecrets.com. You can get exclusive stuff by doing so. So please go there, sign up. You can also get all of our previous episodes. We have all of them on there cataloged. You can get a lot of, it's amazing how many political trade secrets that we have put out there and that are available to people. By the way, we mentioned Mark Halperin during the show with Newsmax, and the term political trade secrets, he didn't necessarily coin it, but there's a sentence in one of his books, I think it's called The Road to the White House or something like that, or The Way to Win. And he talks about all the different professionals who have their various political trade secrets. And anyway, I lifted that from his book, and I'd like to have Mark Halperin on at some point as well to acknowledge him that I ripped that out of one of his books. So you also can join us to get the freshest political trade secrets by texting me at 202-918-3345. Again, 202-918-3345. That's the best way to get information about us regularly. We send out resources from the show. Like afterwards, I'll send out a link to the World is Watching for folks that they can check that out on Amazon Prime. And I sent also a link to the book before. So people can be on that, and you can correspond with us, ask questions. We get questions throughout the day, and we communicate with people. So thank you to everybody who does that. Again, that's text us at 202-918-3345. The number's up there, and you can do that. And Sean, how else, if someone really wants to be the most powerful political leader they can be, really unleash their political power, what can they do to go to the next level?
Well, reach out to us. That's olsonstrategies.com. Thinking about running for office, want to see how you can be the most powerful political leader that you can be for your community, interested in working around politics, maybe in our, inquire about our interns and fellows program. So reach out to us. It's olsonstrategies.com. OLSON strategies.com. You can email me. It's Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com. or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com, or you can even call us at 202-933-3473. So we'd love to have a conversation with you, however you want to set it up. And then we're proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. What do? Canvassing, petitioning, live calling. We're having conversations with candidates that are saying, how do I get onto the ballot? And, is that something that we can be helpful with? You get one shot to make the ballot. You get one shot to ensure that you have secured your place and that people can weigh in and vote on the vision that you're providing to them. So you want to make sure that it counts, and you want to go with the best in the business, and that's Grassfire, www.grassfire.us. So reach out to them today. And then they also field 10centtexting.com. This is your way to connect with your voters, your constituents, right where they are on their mobile device. 82% of people open every text message they get. So you want to make sure that it counts and have it be a dynamic. And that's where an image, GIF, short video right there in the body of the text message can make all the difference. So reach out to 10centtexting.com today and see how they can help you connect with your voters and your constituents.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. And today, as you mentioned earlier, is an election day somewhere. And I know that a number of folks have gone to our sponsor to launch their text messages today. And that is just so amazing. There's no other form of communication where 82% of people will pay attention if you do it.
Yep.
And speaking to what Jason was telling us earlier, and to really take his advice, make it a memorable communication, make it a memorable message, make it actually something that connects with people emotionally. And you can do that in a text. It's amazing. You can actually have strong interactions with people. You can have communication with them and really answer their questions. It's how people connect these days. So do check that out. That's an excellent way to do it and get in front of people today if you need to get a message to them right away and have it cut through. It's an excellent tool. I really appreciate Jason being on today. This was an excellent episode. I really appreciate the great questions, in particular about preparing to run for office. I thought he had some great thoughts on that. And you can learn so much from people who have these different experiences and different backgrounds, and you can bring those into your political leadership. And I hope people do. I hope all the aspiring political leaders out there, all the old hands, they take a little bit from this episode and really bring in that emotional connection for folks, and to really be able to tell the story. Anything last, thoughts you'd like to add to that, Sean?
Yeah, well, Jason was great. I really think there was a lot of information here that people can glean a lot out of, that can make a difference in your campaign, what it is that you're trying to achieve, and the ability to connect with people quickly. It is something that I think, particularly in the work that we've done with Jason, where that 30-second ad really does create a lot of familiarity, connectivity, and gets to the heart of what people care about. You're going to need to be able to do that quickly in your campaign. And so really check out what Jason was talking about today, because it will make a difference for you and your campaign.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that, Sean, and thank you for your insights today as we went through the program. Looking forward to having everybody back again tomorrow to share some more great political trade secrets. We'll be on at 11 a.m., so please do join us for that. Last night we had our first Clubhouse, and thank you to everybody who joined us for that. It was a really great conversation with a lot of great Americans, and we appreciate people joining us for that conversation. We are out there to connect with as many conservatives, as many Americans that we can empower to be the absolute most effective citizens possible, and to be the powerful political leaders, to unleash their political power, to be able to help reignite American patriotism. We really do thank you for being here and supporting this process. So with that, this has been another excellent episode of Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes, and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.